Yeah,
Okay, got
now it
it.
is. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
I'm gonna close the door. Give me a sec.
Yep. It's December 8th, 2025. Shane Balkowitsch talking to the Art Center College of Design, Design 2 class by Khodr Cherri.
Good morning, class. Happy Monday. Happy Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
All right. Without further ado, I'm gonna introduce my dear friend and colleague, Shane. He's an incredible artist. We collaborate to a mutual friend of ours. We met and we just have a lot in common. He's an incredible artist, art at a whole different level. And yeah, you guys gonna enjoy this. This is something so unique, so different. It's one of a kind. So without further ado, Shane, please take it away.
Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate the invite. We did this last year, and hopefully we can do this every year going forward. Um, Students, my name is Shane Balkowitsch. I'm a wet plate collodion photographer here in Bismarck, North Dakota. The wet plate process dates back to 1851. The only photographic process that predates the wet plate process, the daguerreotype. The screen here will give you a little bit of information. I'm not going to read too much from some of these screens, so you guys can kind of read it as I talk. But in about 1838, you have to understand this is the infancy of the birth of photography. Daguerre, a Frenchman, invented this process by which they could use mercury and polish plates of copper and make photographs of people. This is the first time that you could actually take photographs of people. And I can't talk about my wet plate process from 1851 without going into the previous process and showing Mr. Daguerre. The collodion process is what I practice. So there's less than 1,000 of us here in the United States that are in the world actually that practice this process. It was invented by Frederick Scott Archer in 1851. He was in the United Kingdom, and he gave this process to the world. He didn't make any money. He didn't patent it or anything like that. There was a scientific journal called The Chemist that he had submitted his process to. And from that point on, between about 1851 and about 1885, when this process fell out of favor, this photographic process ruled the world. Had a huge honor this last August here. I was giving a talk at the University of Oxford on wet plating, and I knew if I was going to the United Kingdom that I would have to find Frederick Scott Archer's grave. So
Wow.
this is a photograph of me visiting his grave site, his family grave site. That's the tombstone that's standing erect there is his family's tombstone. And at the we brought some flowers. And I went with a couple other wet plate brothers, and then I left a bottle. That's a bottle of my vial of my collodion, which is the magical elixir that he had given to the world. The collodion allows us to get silver molecules to jump out of a silver nitrate bath and make a photosensitive plate. So this is me, Northern London, visiting the grave of Frederick Scott Archer, which was very moving for me as someone who's been and practicing this for 13 years. To be able to pay homage to him was amazing. What's amazing about this process that I practice is it's completely archival and the resolution. So, as far as archivability, the images that I make, students are made out of pure silver on glass. So the resulting image is an image out of pure silver. And what I tell the students when I teach this at Bismarck State College is if you put a silver coin down on the ground and you come back 500 years from now, what's on the ground? And the answer must be a silver coin. So, like paints and pigments and inks and all the things that we make photographs out of, paintings and prints and all these things, they all fall apart. They're all organic, many of them, and they'll fall apart over time. The wet plate will not fall apart. Silver will be here 1,000 years from now, so unchanged, which is rather remarkable. So it's the most archival photographic process man has ever created. And then we can talk really briefly about the resolution. So I know you guys know your digital cameras and your megapixels and stuff. It's child's play compared to these early photographic processes, including the daguerreotype. So um, if I could pipette a molecule of silver at one at a time, like with a pipette, which would be rather small, by the way, but if I could go one molecule of silver at the tip of my finger, two molecules, three molecules, four molecules of silver, what number do I get to until you can see it with the human eye? And the answer is about 2 billion with a B molecules of silver at the tip of your finger to visualize it with the human eye. So my subsequent photographs that I'm making are written in these molecules of silver. So you can take any of the plates. I think you can see some of the plates on the wall behind me. You can take any one of these plates off the wall, take it to any university, ask for their most high-powered microscope, and you can put that plate under that microscope and you cannot get to the pixel or grain that makes that image. So these are the most high resolution photographs man has ever created, and we abandoned this process in 1885 for something more convenient. We'll have a little Q&A at the end, Khodr. Is that
Yeah.
the thoughts? Okay, great. So, to talk a little bit about the process, and we're not going to get too deep into the weeds, but these are all the steps that have to occur. And what's fascinating about this is that they have to occur within minutes of pouring the plates. So, can you about imagine if you had your iPhone and you needed to do all these steps in order to get one image to appear on your iPhone? And that's kind of what we're up against. So, got to cut the plate, we got to pour the plate, we got to dip the plate into the silver. We got to get the plate to the camera and do the exposure after the composition. We got to return to the darkroom. We got to develop the plate. We got to rinse the plate. We got to fix and wash the plate. We got to dry the plate. We eventually have to varnish the plate. Somewhere in there's the scanning of the plate, and then we have to label the plate. So all of these steps have to occur in order for us to get to an image. And you'll see this historic graphic here on the right from any Victorian era photo book. One of the other fantastic things, and, people call it a hindrance, but for me, it's the only process that I practice. So I don't ever consider any of these things hindrances, is that you actually have to have a darkroom with you. So if you had to, again, we'll go back to the iPhone or your digital camera. If you had to have a darkroom with you at the time of exposure in order to make a photograph, I think there'd be a lot less iPhone photographs being taken today. So here's a depiction of a man in a dark room, and I have a very similar. When I go on the road, when I photographed Greta Thunberg, the Swedish environmentalist, I had to have my darkroom with me. So in the field with my chemistry, with the silver, with the plates, and you have to have red lights, and all of these things on this list here are needed in order to make a picture. I've just finished an article for Petapixel, one of the largest photography blogs in the world, and it's going to publish at the end of December. And it's titled "We Have Time Machines. They are called photographs." And hopefully, you students, after we have this talk, you guys can check that out at the end of the month. Here's Jordan Peterson, the most famous psychologist in the world from the last probably 75 years. I traveled to Minneapolis, Minnesota to photograph him, and this photograph on the left is all of the equipment that I needed to have with me in order to make that picture on the right happen. Here's, I mentioned Greta Thunberg. Here's on the upper left-hand corner, me working out of the back of my Hummer with my portable darkroom and Greta Thunberg watching. And there's a photograph below, similar to the photograph that you saw of the historic photographer making wet plates. Roger Fenton's Rolling Darkroom from 1855. So that would have been pulled by oxen or horse. And so I thought in 2014 maybe I should redepict the modern day darkroom. And there's a picture of me sitting on the hood of my trusty vehicle. About 8 years ago, I built no Nostalgic Glass Wet Plate Studio, the one of a kind, probably the only bespoke, built from the ground up natural light photography studio built in the country in over 100 years. So we're using natural light. You'll see the windows there. We call those, the lights, and the light comes into the building. And unless I'm creating at night or at dusk or something, I use the sun's energy and the photons of light from the sun in order to make the pictures that I'm going to share with you. And the bottom right is a panoramic of me sitting in my dark room. That was I think there was 30 shots to make that panoramic that had to be stitched together to get that shot that Tom Wirtz did of me.
Well,
Here, I wanted to show you this is the fix. So, this is one of the processes. This is when the negative becomes the positive, and hopefully, you guys will be able to hear this and see this video. So, you will see me. This is after the exposure and after the development and after the rinsing. You will see me immersing the plate in a bath of fixer. And we were doing a creative piece based off Mucha, Alphonse Mucha's work from 1898 called The Rose. So, let's see if this plays.
that's what the magic happens.
So as you can see, the ladies were rather excited in the magic that happens in my studio. So what you saw there in the bath was a silver, pure silver image on black glass. Um, so I practiced the Collodion positive process where you can actually view these images. A lot of photographers back in the day, I should explain really quickly, would make negatives so that they could do contact prints on paper. I'm not really interested in making multiple prints of my work, so I stick with the positive process. And as I started learning this, and I'm self-taught, I never owned a camera before 2012. If that's any inspiration to you, the Ernie Lapointe, the great grandson of Sitting Bull, walked into my studio. What had happened, and I had found out about Orlando Scott Goff. Here's a photograph of him in Bismarck, North Dakota, where I'm actually contacting you from today. We're having this talk. This is Orlando Scott Goff, a wet plate photographer in my hometown. I found out about him, and then I found out that he had taken a photograph of Sitting Bull, this photograph of Sitting Bull, which is a really famous photograph of the man. And what's really interesting about this image from July 31st, 1871, is this was the first ever photograph of the man. So Sitting Bull had never been photographed before coming to Bismarck and being photographed by Orlando Scott Goff. I found that fascinating. I thought that was just fantastic piece of history. Um, and so I contacted Ernie Lapointe, the great grandson of City Bull. He lives in Leeds, South Dakota, and told him about the image. He knew about the image, obviously. And I said, will you come to Bismarck and let me take your photograph? And 135 years after Sitting Bull's portrait was taken here in Bismarck, North Dakota, in the wet plate process, I took his great grandson's photograph. The image on the left is the resulting image, and that's called Eternal Field. That would be ground zero for my series Northern Plains Native Americans, a Modern Wet Plate Perspective. So that's plate one. And as I sit here and talk to you, um, I've made 916 Native American portraits over the last 12 years.
Wow.
The idea is to photograph 1,000 Native Americans and having volumes of books. So every 250 portraits, I make a book. And so I've published 3 books so far. And then when I reach 1,000, I'll be able to publish my 4th book. What's really funny about this, just to let you go into how the translation happens, like you can see on the picture on the photograph, the iPhone photograph on the right, there's a car passing in the back. And Ernie, he didn't know anything about this process. This is a very slow process. I have 10-second exposures in the studio. This was like a 2-second exposure outdoors. And he thought that these cars would appear. But the fact is, the process is so slow with an ISO of -1 that I knew that these cars would not appear in the background. So trucks and stuff were driving by while as I was making this picture. Here's a picture of Ernie in my studio holding an original silver on glass plate. That plate is actually at the State Historical Society of South Dakota. Here's another portrait I took of Ernie and him doing some explaining and teaching to me. So when you don't have any Native American friends, and he becomes your first friend, you try to pay attention to what he has to say. And He's bestowed upon me much knowledge over the years and allowed me to start to understand this culture and to garner the trust of 916 different people. I've had Native Americans come from as far as Florida to have their portraits taken in my studio for the series. This just happened a couple of weeks ago, so I thought, I could ask the question in this talk, how important is photography? Echo Joe Dwarf was a friend of mine. She had come in. She was a complete stranger back on August 23rd, 2024. We spent the day together. We contacted each other afterwards. We were in contact, and I had just learned a couple weeks ago that she'd passed away in a car accident. So, um, the question is like, how important is that photograph on the left there? That photograph, I know for a fact, is sitting at the State Historical Society of North Dakota in their climate controlled vault. And 1,000 years from now, her great 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 grandchildren can ask to see that image, and they will bring it out with white gloves and show it to her. So I didn't want to give this talk, Khodr, without paying a little homage to my friend.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Some of the things that you realize when you're doing this is the cultural appropriation in the digital age. The photograph on the left is not a real Native American. That's not real regalia. And the narrative on the right is the black and white image is my image, which received 4 likes over a month's time in this one particular group that had 170,000 members on Facebook. And the image on the right received 788 likes in one day. So I'm not quite sure what that says about us as a society. But one of these images is fake and one of them's not. And for some reason, the fake artificial image is garnering attention when the authentic image of an authentic Native American is not. I give lectures. I just spoke with the University of North Dakota, the professors there, for an AI symposium. I've written 5 articles on Petapixel as well, talking about the problems of artificial intelligence. And hopefully, you students are aware of this problem that we're having. These 3 images here, none of these people exist in the real world. So these people have never existed. And the problem we have is that these images will get out into the wild, and it may confuse our future history. 36 of my Native American portraits were located in the AI training data without my permission or reimbursement. So if you do go to ChatGPT or Anthropic or Claude or wherever you go to use, and you ask it to make a Native American tintype or wet plate, more than likely some of the data from my scans would have been used to generate those. Um, I'm sharing this image here. This image is a fake AI image of Elvis Presley, celebrated on the Elvis Presley fan page on Facebook with tens of thousands of followers. And we got to ask ourselves, what significance does this have? Does this bring anything to the historical aspects of the man himself? And I can't think but that this will do, just this does nothing for his legacy and will do nothing but harm his legacy. Here's 11-foot tall volleyball player, 20 million views. This AI image and video received. People are starting to use terms for this kind of stuff. It's now being called AI slop, that kind of stuff. And we have to understand the internet is being washed over by fake narratives and fake imagery, and our history is at stake. Digital images on our phone are a technological illusion. They do not exist in the real world. What I'm saying here in this little post is that your iPhone images, your digital images, if they're not printed, they don't exist. That's to say, if you have 5,000 photographs on your iPhone, if you weigh your phone with those photographs on it and then delete the 5,000 photographs, the phone will weigh the same. So it's pretty common sense that unless you are figuring out how to bring these images into the real world, they're not going to have any place in society or any place in our history books. When I have the students coming out, we usually inherit, like my generation I'm going to inherit a shoebox of photographs from my mom. Digital photos on your phone are lost upon someone's death. Photographs are not being printed and subsequently preserved for the future. This is stack of documents here is about 24,000 printed 4 by 5 images on my iPhone. So the images that are on my iPhone are represented by all of these pieces of paper on the floor. Um, and even though they're not the greatest quality of print, at least they exist in the real world and someone will be able to flip through them in the future. That's not the case with your iPhone images. And if anyone else is interested in my talk, I give a TEDx. If you look on Google, type in Balkowitsch TEDx, and I gave a TEDx talk about 7 years ago on this topic. So I started learning wet plating and people started coming in. And then one of the most famous person who had come in at the time was Evander Holyfield, four-time heavyweight champion of the world, had come into my studio and I had captured him. And it was a rather important moment. I had only been practicing about 2 years wet plating at the time. And again, I'm self-taught, so I really was trying to figure my way around this. And the image on the right, the wet plate there that I made in my old studio, actually made it to the Smithsonian Institute. They sent a climate controlled van out and they collected the plate and they drove it back to the Smithsonian. And here's a picture of Evander holding the plate. And we made it on the front of View Camera magazine as well. It was a huge honor. I've only been practicing photography for 2 years to be able to capture this moment in history. And it was a pivotal moment for me because then I realized that we're making history today and we don't have to always rely on something from the past. Then I started doing some recreations, some being inspired by other works. So the Persecution of Complete Strangers on the left, I made in 2016, inspired by the work of my favorite photographer William Mortensen from 1927. I did the Capsizing Humanity in 2017. These are very large collaborations, many people involved, months and months of work to get these to pull these off. My Capsizing Humanity on the left in 2017 was inspired by the raft of the Medusa that sits at the Louvre in the top right corner. Another photographer that I respect, Joel Peter Whitkin, he also did his own raft of the Medusa in 2006. You'll see that down in the right-hand corner. So art is always inspiring. I was trying to learn and understand how to use my camera and understand different perspectives, and it was fun. It was a fun method to kind of hone my skills. Liberty Trudges Through Injustice on the left. I did that in 2018, about 50 yards from my studio. And then inspired by Liberty Leading the People, also at the Louvre in France. I should show this is my daughter Abby here with the bow staff. My son Grayson is fallen down here in the foreground. I was accused, you'll see the Capitol building here, here in the image, and I was accused of photoshopping that in when in fact that is a wood cutout that a local painter painted the Capitol building, and we just stood it up behind Abby for the shot. Made in Pouring Milk was another. I was inspired by Vermeer's painting. I knew about this painting, so um, my again back to William Mortensen, who won the RPS Hood Medal in 1949. He also was inspired by the Vermeer, so he did maid servant pouring milk in 1938. Here is the behind the scenes shot. This is the creation of my maiden pouring milk. And the most difficult part is to find a chicken with its feet still on its carcass. So that was kind of a challenge, but we were able to pull that off. And here is my prop master and Eve, my muse for the day, doing the setup to try to follow the great masters. And here is the final image made in pouring milk. I did this on December 10th, 2021. This is permanently curated by the Royal Photographic Society in the United Kingdom, which is the oldest photographic society in the world, dating back to 1836, I want to say. And here's all three of them side by side. And yeah, I'm just demonstrating to you, just trying to be inspired by the past. In 13 years, I've made 5,556 plates. This is my first ever wet plate taken on October 4th, 2012, plate number one on my brother Chad. I subsequently I do a plate of him with a black backdrop with his shirt off every year. So I have 14 plates right now. It's called My Brother Through the Years, and I'm witnessing my brother as he ages. This series will, upon his death or upon my death, will go to his oldest daughter, the series of plates. As of last week, I have 107 museums or archives around the world that are permanently protecting my works. My life's mission is to preserve as many plates as possible, not for me, but for my subjects. This is some work that I did a year or so ago. I do a review. So I just did a review yesterday, and this is my 2025 year in review. So I made 316 8 by 10 black glass amber types in the entire year. So that's working pretty much full time. So every week I'm booked out about 7 months for my Friday sessions. I'm either working on my Native American work or I'm working on some of my creative work that you can also see here. And if I tell the students when they come in, if you were to have a wedding this afternoon, you would easily the wedding photographer would take more than 5,000 portraits or photographs with their digital camera in an afternoon's time or over the time of an entire day. It's taken me 13 years to make that many of these plates. When I celebrated my 5,000th plate, which was a plate, I took a photograph of my studio. A math teacher, I can't remember from what state, called me on the phone and asked me how thick my glass was. And I said 3 millimeters, and he did a quick, simple calculation, and he told me that if you stacked your plates on top of each other like this, Shane, it would reach 84 feet in the air, which would be about 3 or 4 times, about 4 stories high, is how much work I've been able to accumulate over the last 13 years since I started. Here's one of my images. This is one of my articles. My first article for Petapixel: AI imagery is not photography. It never will be. The This is these little quotes here are from me. The truth is grounded in reality. AI imagery is grounded in lies, deceit, and deception. This is another article I did. AI imagery may destroy history as we know it. Museums are going to confront AI imagery as a cancer to the real history that they preserve. So as these images get out there, I talked to many, having images at 107 museums. I talked to these curators, and one of the big problems that they think they're going to have in the future is trying to segregate to make sure that these artificial images do not get into their archive and ruin our history. Because you just have to understand, I don't mean to get so much on this AI thing, but it's really poignant, and if we're talking about we're talking about photography in present day, it would be very, very short-sighted for me not to address the big topic on this topic right now, on this subject matter, and it's this AI just destroying everything that we're trying to preserve here about who we are. I also did an article, AI is corrupting the internet as we know it. There's a thought that there's going to be so many AI images eventually that we're going to have to abandon the internet and start over. If all of the information out there is false and all the information out there, or a majority of it, cannot be trusted, there's a theory that we may have the dead internet. AI images are visual pollution that clog and deceive our collective reality. Does the world need more AI fake people? And again, if you guys are interested, you guys can find these images out there. This is when I said this a little tongue in cheek, but I feel strongly about this. People who fall for AI adore wax fruit in a bowl and fake plants in a pot. If you're interested about what I do here at Nostalgia Glass Wet Plate Studio, I have a video on Amazon Prime. It's called Balkowitsch. You just type in my last name, and it's an hour-long video, and it'll go deeper into who I am as an artist. It will show you. There's a short interview in there from Ernie Lapointe, and it shows about my series and what I've been doing here for the last 13 years. Um, and I've these are my last two books that I did. This is volume two on the left and volume three on the right. And as soon as I get to 1,000 portraits, I will do volume four. Volume one's been sold out for about 6 years, and those volumes of books, they're people are trying to get them because they're not available anymore, and they're selling at auctions for about $280. And anytime that I get students in front of me, there's this little message that I like to say. So I'll just read it out loud. The present is now. This is all that we have. All we have is the present. Yesterday is but a low resolution memory. Tomorrow cannot be predicted or expected. This present moment is where we live our lives 1 second at a time. What better way to immortalize our lives than with photography? It is the only proof or record we have of what happened in the past. The written and spoken words are fraught with mistakes, biases, misunderstandings, and imperfections. A perfect photographic record gives us the best chance at understanding what happened in the past. In the end, it is all we have. I happen to think it is important to capture these moments as they occur. I want to prove that I existed with the works that I create.
Great statement. Really good.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was wondering if any of you students have any questions for me about this process.
Come on, guys.
What drew you to do this process in the first place?
That's a great question. I saw, as a non-photographer, again, I never owned a camera before 2012. As a non-photographer, I saw an image online of there was this gentleman, his name was Paul DeLoreans, was traveling across the United States, taking wet plates of vintage motorcycles. And I saw him with his little bottle, and he was pouring stuff on the plate, but there was this out of focus. There was a motorcycle, and it wasn't that well executed of an image, and it wasn't something that would should like grab you and say, "Hey, you need to do this." But I saw this image, and I messaged Paul back, and this has been well documented. I said, "Paul, what is that?" And he said, "Well, it's a wet plate." So, I've always had a fondness for history, so I looked up what a wet plate was, and here's this archaic photograph nobody's practicing. So I went back to Paul and I said, Paul, I would just love to do that. And he said, well, Shane, are you a photographer? And I said, I don't own a camera. And he said, and he wasn't being mean, he was just being honest. He said, there's no way a non-photographer will ever teach himself wet plating. And within 45 days of that conversation, I made that very first image of my brother Chad. So that's where I started. So this all, I never knew that, at some point that I'd have images, in these museums. I never knew about the book series. This wasn't anything. There was no intent on any of this. It was just me sitting in my back warehouse photographing my family to start with, and then people started coming in, and it's been one hell of a ride over the last 13 years.
Oh. How different color and different color clothing and texture appears in the final photograph when you do wet plating?
Yes, I can see if you got a second here, if you don't mind, I should be able to find. Um, are you still seeing my page or not?
Yep.
Okay, color. So that's a very good question, and I'll share that with you really here, right? I should be able to share this here. Did that pull up?
Not yet.
Okay. Hmm. I wonder how to share this.
Maybe you have to stop sharing this PowerPoint and reshare again.
Okay. Stop sharing. Okay. Sorry, you guys. This isn't Zoom. Share. Can you guys see that?
It's blank screen.
Okay. Did they come in now?
Yep. Hmm.
Okay. And then did you see this?
Yep.
Okay.
Collodion, yep.
There's a photograph of a very colorful still life, and then the translation in the wet plate process. So what you'll find that blues turn white in wet plating. So you'll see the blue vase that's holding up the three peaches on the left. You'll
Shane,
see that that becomes clear.
no, sorry, it's not showing. It's just showing bunch of images.
Oh, it's not showing.
Yeah, specific. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see here. I apologize.
that's okay.
Share. How about this?
Blank. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. So there's a very colorful photograph at the top. And what we find is that the blues, like that blue vase on the left
Yep.
holding up the peaches, turns white. It turns clear. So blues become white. So if you wear blue jeans, I take your photograph and you're wearing blue jeans, they are become white jeans. And you will find that the reds, you see those red apples, reds become black in the wet plate process. So there's this beautiful translation that occurs in the process, and it's just the wet plate photographers knew that they didn't have color, and you will see like they would do some rouging where they'd actually tap some paint pigments of different paints and pigments into the cheeks of women and stuff before they'd varnish their plates. So we they understood early on that reality is in color, but these early photographic processes, silver does not have any color to it. So it's all about tonality and the different ranges of that tonality. And that's what you get with wet plates. So that was a good question.
Thank you. Is there a specific care required for those plates to preserve them?
Yeah, so I used that example during my talk about the silver coin on the ground, and you come
Oh
back
yeah.
500 years from now and it's a silver coin. But what will have changed on that is that the silver will tarnish. So we have learned and they learned this in the Victorian era, that once oxygen gets to the
Yep.
silver starts to tarnish and becomes black. So that will happen to my images if I don't varnish them. So all of the plates, the final plate, and then that list of those steps that I told you early on in the presentation. The last step is always to varnish the plate. So you take table shellac, like something you would shellac a wood table with back in the Victorian era to protect it from liquids and stuff. We pour that onto the plate, and that locks out the oxygen. And then once you lock out the oxygen, you don't get any tarnishing. So once it's varnished, as long as you don't break the image and it's not, you don't put it in some kind of really humid environment or something like that, there's no issues whatsoever. So they can be out in the open, the sunlight doesn't bother them or anything. So it's just so fantastic that you're able to make images out of silver. Do you students know if silver is innate to Earth? Any ideas if it's naturally occurring here on Earth? Anyone have an answer to that question?
No.
You say no? Is that what you believe?
Oh, no, I'm just saying I have no idea.
Oh, you have no idea. Okay. Well, that's fair. All of our heavy metals, okay, our silvers, our platinums, our coppers, our golds, all of them, our nickels, none of them, there was never enough energy in the formation of Earth to form any of our heavy metals. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. So none of those metals were ever formed here on Earth in the formation of Earth. So you have to ask yourselves, well, how did they get here then? And what happens is the only time in our universe when there's enough energy to make all of our heavy metals is in the explosion of a star. So a star will run out of helium and hydrogen. It will become really big and become a red giant. Eventually, it will implode. At that moment of explosion is when these molecules, there's enough energy to make our heavy metals. So that's when the heavy metals were made in the universe. And then what you have is an asteroid, meteorite, or comet flies through that cloud of debris, collects these heavy metals, crashed into Earth. And that's how the silver that I make my images out of got onto these plates. So then us as humans, we collect them in different silver mines, or, in tributaries, the rivers will bring all these heavy metals together, and then we mine the heavy metals. So there's no more, you can't get any more silver on Earth, no more gold on Earth, no more nickel on Earth, all of these things. We cannot man-made any of these any of these heavy metals because of the amount of energy that it's needed to make them. So it's a fantastic romantic thought that these images behind me here were brought here on extraterrestrial bodies.
Wow, that's so cool.
A lot of
That's
people
really
think
cool.
there's only so much gold on this planet, and once it's gone, it's gone. And they think it's about a football field worth of gold. And once it's mined and once it's on everyone's fingers and around their necks and in bars of gold, that's all there is. And we have no way of getting any more unless a gold-laden meteorite crashes into Earth and spreads some more gold here. It's the only way that it gets to this planet, which is to me is just fantastic. Just fantastical. A little bit of science for you guys.
No, this is so
This
wonderful.
whole process is science. This you have to understand the chemist when Frederick Scott Archer um, gave this to the world, it was in the Chemist. Okay, what was the Chemist, the magazine? It was a scientific journal. It was one of the most significant scientific journals of the time. So when photography was invented, this was the greatest achievement, scientific achievement of the century. This was going to the moon. This was no less of a feat than going to the moon. To have a likeness of someone, you didn't have a photograph before then. You'd have to have a painter or a drawer or someone do a charcoal sketch for you or something. That was the only way you'd have a rendering of someone that you loved. And when photography came around, you just have to understand we take it so much for granted these days, but it was such a miraculous invention. And that's why it appeared in the Chemist, a scientific journal, because of all the chemistry and all the thought and all the research that had to go into this to figure this all out, to be able to preserve these images, to actually capture people's reflections using lenses and a camera. It was just miraculous.
Yeah, it is so fascinating. I mean, photography, to me, it's just like it's history. I mean, like you said, like the present, who knows what the present is? I mean, who knows what the future is going to be? But we know what our present is, and we know what the future was. That yeah, photography is still going to remain, still going to be the one save
It's our
after we
only
all
it's
go.
it's our only window to the past.
Yep,
It's our only window to the past. What
yep,
did you have for lunch last Tuesday? You have no idea.
no idea.
Okay. What are
Yep,
you going to have for lunch next Tuesday? You
we have
have
no
no
idea.
idea, right? But
Yep.
when you have a photograph from the 1800s and you look at it, I mean, just think about all the historic photographs. I mean, you weren't even there, but you can put yourself there. The images gives you this window. Now we could have the most brilliant writers in the world. Shakespeare he could use his words to describe that same scene. It's not going to carry the weight. Okay. It's not going to carry the weight, and it's still too much interpretation has to go on. With a photograph, there's no interpretation. If it's a true photograph of the light bouncing off the subject at that moment 175 years ago, you and I can be standing there at the Gettysburg Address, when Lincoln's talking, and we can put ourselves there with a photograph. You can't do that with anything else, and nobody else is alive that lived during that era. So I don't, it's just so important to know to leave these records behind. And, we are going to be the forgotten generation. This generation, you students, are going to be the forgotten generation. I used this example last week in my darkroom when I had some visitors. I told them, we all have all these photographs that we're taking more photographs today than in the first 150 years of photography. I'm not sure if you know that. So we take more photographs in one single day than in 150 years, the first 150 years of photography. And all of those photographs are in digital format on phones. What happens? Grandma passes away. I don't ever remember anyone ever saying to me, "Oh, did you pay grandma's Verizon bill this month so that her cloud does not get, erased and that her images are preserved?" Nobody's saying that. Nobody's also saying upon grandma's death, make sure you get grandma's phone from her so that we can download all of her photographs and do prints so that we don't lose grandma's photos that she took. Maybe grandma was it was just snapping pictures of pizzas, or maybe she was actually capturing some really important moments in her life that you would like to, as someone that's related to her, have those moments. They're all lost. So you pass away, you stop paying your Verizon bill, someone stops paying your Verizon bill, and Verizon says, "Oh, they haven't paid this month. gone.
Yep.
20,000 images, gone. Never to be found again. And my wife has a BlackBerry. I'm not sure if you kids are old enough to understand what a BlackBerry phone was. It was one of the first, iPhones where you could actually take pictures. We have one up at the house. I can't get an image off that to save my life, and that's only 15 years ago. So even if you kept the phone in a drawer or something, that hardware is going to let you down 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So there's no possible way to save these images. And I don't mean to get on the soapbox today, but these images are all going to be lost. So the moral of the story is if there's images on your phone that are important to you, print them.
Yep.
I don't care if it's a cheap, Khodr, you do wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous prints. They don't have to be that quality in order to preserve the history. They could just be, even send it off to Walmart or to, or to Target or something. Just anything printed off is going to be better than nothing at all. And that's what we're going to be left with, nothing at all.
Yep. I had a hard drive failed from 10 years ago,
Mm,
and I never had a backup. So
mm,
so whatever was in there, gone.
it's gone.
That taught me a lesson to have like more than backup, like especially like right now for my business, I have triple backups. I have a local server, have a local hard drives, and then everything gets backed up on the Amazon clouds because that's the only way with the triple backups, I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's a lot of people trust me with their images, their files, and they depend on me, because so I have to think for them. I have to protect in their
You're
asset.
looking out for them.
Look
Yep.
out.
I
Exactly.
have RAID drive here, and then I do, there's a subsequent, it goes to the cloud. And then
Yep.
it also, the moment I post an image here on my computer, it gets sent up to the laptop at my house, which is 100 yards away. And
Yep.
then I also have a backup that goes to the State Historical Society in North Dakota that goes in their vault. So they put it in a vault, a climate control vault. So I have four backups to all my digital content. And even with that, they're still not sure because if the JPEG or the TIFF format gets changed, it's going to be very difficult to read. I've got an example. I don't know if we have time for this, but I have an example. My dad in the I had an Apple IIe computer in 1981. That gives you an idea how long I've been around computers. I designed a website in 1991 before anyone even knew the internet was existed. But my dad came to me at the late 1880s and asked me to, on a word processor, which was a really new technology, he said, "Can you take my poems, Shane, and type them into and put them on a floppy disk?" And I put them on a 5 1/4. Remember the 5 1/4 inch discs? So I typed in all my dad's poems. So, my dad's poems are rather important. I typed in all my dad's poems, put them on a floppy disk, and I found that floppy disk about 3 years ago. And my dad has since passed away. So I took that floppy disk. Yeah, there you go, your old Mac. Yeah, fantastic, Khodr. So I took that floppy disk and I sent it to this world premiere service that they specialize in getting data off of different kinds of media. Sent them a $500 check in this 5 1/4 inch floppy disk in an effort to get my dad's poems.
Wow.
And there's nothing on there. They sent me my check back and sent me the disc back and said, there's no data that can be retrieved. And I understand that's only 30 years ago, 40
I
years
know.
ago. That's
Yep.
not 140 years ago, 240 years ago. So we were told that the CD-ROMs are going to last forever or 100 years, right? They're finding out that they don't even last 10 years.
Yep.
So the moral of the story is, and I'm an analog photographer, so I've got to preach a little bit. I've got to say analog is actually, when you talk about analog, it actually exists. And that's why you'll see, if you do look on my Instagram, you'll see a lot of times me holding up my plates to show and take an iPhone photograph of me holding the plate in my hand because it's proving to the people that this thing exists, that it's an object somewhere that you can go and visit and hold, and I can hand it to you. That's not the case with your iPhone images, and they're just all gonna, they're all, the hardware's gonna let us down or the software's gonna let us down, and they're not going to be in the future. So then you have to ask yourself, if all this stuff is going to be gone, lost, what's the point? To just what? Share it on social media? I mean, is that, and we can't trust social media. You can't say, okay, Facebook's going to be around 150 years ago. They just sent a notice out last week that they're starting to delete all the reels. So they're trying to save some disk space over there at Facebook. So they sent out this image, this notice to us all saying, oh, by the way, we told you to upload all these videos and stuff. By the way, within 30 days, we're deleting them. So you can't trust any of this technology. You can't trust these companies to be around to, to propagate your images forward. You can't trust the cameras. You can't trust any of it. And I don't mean to be a doomer here, but these are just the facts. So if you do have some, we'll end with that. If you do have some images on your phone, do me a favor. Just go ahead and have them printed, put them in a little folder, put them in your drawer, and at least the people that follow you can have what you thought was important at the time.
It's a great message. Yeah, I mean, the students here, I mean, it's required part of their BA degree. They have to do analog. Most of them, they still shoot film.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they shoot in both, digital and film. Yeah, and I mean, shooting film, you hold a negative in your hand, or negative or positive. I mean, a lot of shoot negative. I mean, this is what you have, digital, it's just digital. It's on the phone, in the cloud, somewhere, and we have no electricity, no internet.
Yeah. And let's just put this argument about the cloud to bed, okay? Because we heard all the propaganda. The cloud is nothing more than a server and some location that you're not aware of, run by some people that you don't know.
Yeah.
So trusting anything to the cloud, I had 4,800 of my iPhone images lost on my phone that were at the cloud. I called Apple and they said there's nothing we could do for you. We're sorry, this happens sometimes. 4,800 images. Just boom,
Wow.
they were on the cloud. I had proof that they were at the cloud. I said, "You guys are all the advertising saying give me my photos back. I'm paying you cloud service give me my photos back." And their answer was, "We can't. We're sorry. They're lost." So the cloud is a server in a location you're not even aware of, run by people you don't even know. How much can you trust the cloud? The answer is you can't.
You can't. Yep. Yep. Any further questions for Shane?
Sorry, we got so much onto the AI and the
No, no, it's
digital
all good. I
stuff.
think this is all really
But
good.
when you come to, when you ask for an analog photographer to give a talk, and these things are weighing on my mind, right? Like I give talks and I write articles. I mean, these things they bother me. I'm on this quest to raise awareness to whoever will listen about the technology and how fraught it is, and I want to prove to the world that wet plate photography was the most beautiful photographic process man has ever created, and we abandoned it in 1885 for something more convenient and less expensive. It wasn't a good enough reason. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
Do you have a question?
Hi, Shane. My name is Brooke. I have a question.
Hi, Brooke. Thank you.
So, from prior knowledge of Westplate
Hmm.
before this presentation,
Hmm.
I've been told that wet plate chemicals are really damaging to the planet. I want to know what you do to protect the environment from these corrosive chemicals and from this
Yeah,
corrosive chem.
it's a good
Great.
question. I think it's a complete overstatement of any concern whatsoever. I'm sure you drive a gas car, right? The chemicals that you're using in your gas automobile are far more dangerous and more flammable than anything in wet plating. You may be getting a little bit confused wet plating with the daguerreotype process. So what was happening in the daguerreotype process is they were using mercury, liquid mercury, and they actually heating this up, and these young photographers were breathing in the fumes, and they were getting what's called Mad Hatter's disease, essentially heavy metal poisoning, and they would lose their minds. But there, we use detergents, we use oven cleaners, we use gasoline, we use motor oil. The amount of chemistry, and I know chemistry, and the reason I know chemistry is because I've got a bachelor's of science, and I'm also an oncology nurse. So I'm certified in giving chemicals to people into their veins. This is not, it's a big over dramatization of the dangers involved with this. We have ether is one of the chemicals that I use to make wet plating, one of the major chemicals, and I put on a gas mask because ether we used to use as a nurse. We used to put people unconscious back in the Victorian era. So if we had to amputate an arm or pull a tooth or something like that, so I wear a gas mask and I've got a vented flume But I really, anytime I hear about these things being dangerous, the amount of chemistry, just look around as you drive home today, the amount of chemistry that's used all over the world. I don't consider this a concern whatsoever. It's you're talking very minute amount of chemistry, and I can give you many examples of more dangerous chemicals in our everyday lives that we use, and we don't even think twice about it. So, just oven cleaner for God's sakes, or toilet bowl cleaner.
Bleach.
A toilet bowl cleaner is not good, and it's going right down in the drain. So, my studio here, I actually have I don't have we don't have plumbing here. Um, that goes into the sewer that goes out to the Missouri River here in North Dakota. So it actually goes into a septic tank. So it's actually contained here in a septic tank. So anything going down my darkroom drain, if that helps you, is going just into the septic system. And I'm about 170 feet above the water table here in North Dakota. I'm way up on a hill, so there's no chance of this ever getting down into the water table. So it's a great question. I think a lot of people are concerned about the dangers of wet plating, and I think they get that confused with the daguerreotype process, which had significant dangers. I mean, you're heating up mercury and you're breathing those mercury, and they didn't understand the science of that. They didn't understand Mad Hatter's disease. The Mad Hatter from Disney. Everyone thinks he's like this fun, joking kind of character. He's not a fun, joking kind of character. If you know the history of hat makers, they actually would use mercury with rabbit's fur to make felt hats. So that they were using their hands with rabbit's fur and mixing their hands, and they were getting this mercury into their bloodstream, and they were going crazy. So the Mad Hatter from Disney is actually losing his mind, and his quirky little movements and stuff. It's not funny. It's actually this man is dying, and he will quickly pass away. So there are concerns about these chemistries, and even in the 1950s with in darkroom chemistry, Khodr, as you're familiar as well, that there's just precautions. I wear gloves and but silver nitrate is nitric acid with silver bars dissolved in it. I mean, this is stuff that you're practicing in any science class in any university right now. So, and it's nothing more harmful than anything else we're using. So, we're using dangerous chemicals in far lesser good reasons than me capturing history with it. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, years ago, like to your point on this, Shane, years ago when I was doing like a lot of handline E6 processing,
Mm-hmm.
and I had one of the chemicals was leaking overnight, and
Mm-hmm.
had it for formaldehyde.
Mm.
And I came in the next day, like the smell is like pretty awful. I didn't have any mask. So I'm like, like flushing out like, the chemicals and,
Mm.
before the OSHA showed up and the fire department. By the time the fire department showed up, I was completely on the floor, passed out.
Mm.
Didn't even know what happened
Yeah.
and then they shut us down and, it was just like it was a leak. And I was
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
chemical.
but I mean, these things happen. There's
Yep,
leaks at the gas station today.
yep.
The refinery across the street, lose 500,000 barrels of oil into the river too. So, we just have to be conscious of
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yep.
And we got to be, you just got to be aware of it. And with some precautions and stuff, we can do our best to, but there isn't, from our food supply to, uh, everything that we use, there's chemistry involved. So we
Yep.
just have to be aware of it and try to limit ourselves and protect ourselves. And that's why I have, a $7,000 ventilation flume in my dark room. I wear a mask, and I wear, when the students are working in my dark room, they're always masked up and they got gloves on and stuff. So it's just precautions. It's like anything else, but
I mean, a lot of stuff that we eat and drink that has so much harm, like chemicals in it that we don't know.
let me just
Don't
put this in
read the
perspective.
labels.
There's
Yep.
only 1,000 wet plate artists in the world, so you can, and I'm probably one of the most prolific wet plate artists, making as many more plates than anyone else on the planet. There's 8 billion people. Think about what 8 billion people, what chemistry 8 billion people are doing every day.
Yep.
The world is not going to be harmed by 1,000 wet plate artists making photographs in their darkroom.
How many do you make per week? Do you have like
Well,
is
I
it?
just made so I made 318 in 2025. I just did a tally, and
Yep.
I
Yep.
got this Friday yet, but the beginning of December every year, and I shared with you that little, that recap of my, so, I'm making, last year I think I made 405 or something. So I'm making one a day.
One a
right? But
day.
I'm not making them all on the same day. I'm not coming down here making one plate. So when you get the chemistry and everything together, I'm making between 4 and 6 plates every Friday. So it works out to be almost a plate a day, which
That's
doesn't sound like a lot, but I sit here in front of you as one. I'm making more plates than most. I can't think of anyone that's making more plates than me.
yeah,
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Brooke.
that's a good question. Yeah. Any more questions for Shane?
Oh, I just want to say thank you for sharing your point of view, Shane. I was just I'm a technician.
Yeah,
I work with chem as well, so I
yeah.
understand the whole just properly disposing of chemicals. And I was just wondering because I've seen videos of other wet platers where they're wet plating on location and they're
Hmm.
dripping chem everywhere. And I have never personally wet plated before. So
Yeah.
I don't know what chemicals are really being used to create these images. Um,
Collodion, which is ether and gun cotton, which
mhm,
is ether is, I mean, again, your car is dripping oil out in the parking lot wherever it's parked right now. But and then we have silver nitrate, and then we use hypofixer. Back in the day, the fixer was actually potassium cyanide, which was another dangerous
mhm,
reagent. I don't practice with potassium cyanide. I use hypocrystals, which would be the same thing Khodr would have used back in his film days in the
Yep.
1950s. So but you have to understand these are such small amounts of chemistry. Um, if I have, you can go into my dark room here, and I've got a huge supply. If I've got 3 gallons of chemistry in my entire dark room, I mean, you're talking. It's
Nothing.
such a small amount of chemistry. But so
yeah, definitely. So
if you
I was just curious to know how what you were doing or what process were you using that is different from the information that I obtained. So I believe you were talking about the original wet plating process,
yeah,
dating back from the 1800s.
yep.
That I believe that's the information that was given to me about why wet plating is corrosive to the environment. So that's why I asked, like, oh,
It's
what
the
is?
same process. So, but I can explain to you the chemistry. So we have collodion, which is made out of gun cotton and
Mm-hmm.
ether.
Mm-hmm.
Ether like evaporates away. If you pour ether on a table, it'll be evaporated away in 10 minutes. And you have silver nitrate, which doesn't, we actually um, cured blindness in babies, infants. Okay, so silver nitrate, let's talk about chemistry and the bad sides of chemistry and the good sides of chemistry. So
Mm-hmm.
silver nitrate as an oncology nurse, we actually, if you had a mother who was pregnant with gonorrhea and she gave birth to a child,
Mm-hmm.
that child would become blind. So they would
Mm-hmm.
come throughout the womb and they would get the gonorrhea in their eyes and the child would be blind. So what we did with women for gonorrhea, and this is 100 years, 150 years of using this, we would
Mm-hmm.
instill silver nitrate into the baby's eyes and stop the blindness, which is a fantastic. Silver nitrate is also used it's an antibacterial. They use it in wound dressings as well. So one of the chemicals that I use has saved people from blindness and is used as a disinfectant. So that's one of them. That's the major chemical. The most voluminous chemical is silver nitrate, and those are two applications for silver nitrate. And you can't, it doesn't harm anything. Yeah, if you get it on your hands, you'll get a black stain because the sunlight will get to it. And we know that silver's been photosensitive for years. The other thing is ferrous sulfate developer. Ferrous sulfate is iron. Again, there's in the environment, there's only 1,000 of us making these plates. In my opinion, there's no impact on the environment whatsoever. And a couple of drips out in the field when I'm down there at Standing Rock with Greta Thunberg, this is all organic stuff. It's all going to be as soon as you let light to it and oxygen to it and the weather to it, it's going to be a non-issue. So um, there's only 1,000 of us. We
Okay,
can't be we
interesting. Yeah, I wasn't aware that it is organic chem.
Yeah, it's
And,
ferrous sulfate is copper. I
mm-hmm,
mean, there's copper sulfate, ferrous sulfate, which is iron,
mm-hmm.
and then ether, and then silver nitrate. And like I said, I gave you 2 examples of where that's actually used to help people. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a,
very interesting. Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that to me.
of course, of
I was
course.
just I
I would hate for someone to think that this is damaging the environment and not take up the process. So there's only 1,000 of us. We need more of us, and that's why I teach it at the college, and that's
Yeah.
why I openly have people from all over the world come into my student. I've taught over 30 people this process. So yeah, don't I'll whoever I teach, I share I teach them how to be conscious of the different dangers of this. And obviously you can't stand over. That's why I wear a mask. You sit there, and I didn't wear a mask when I first started. I'm pouring plates, and I've got this ether, and I'm breathing this ether in. Where you make 7 or 8 plates, ether puts people unconscious. It was how we perform surgery on people.
Hmm.
So you just got to be aware of these things. But as far environmental impact, I don't see any concerns whatsoever environmental impact for the volume and the number of us actually using these particular chemicals. Yeah, I just don't see it being a concern. But that's
Oh,
just my
wonderful.
my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, no, I was interested in doing wet plates, and I had spoken to a professor who teaches an alternative processing class.
Hmm.
And I asked about would wet plates be something that he would consider teaching in the class. And because we are in such a small ventilated room,
Hmm.
um, where there is ventilation, but I don't think it's strong enough for 7 or 8 people wet plating at the same time.
Well, you
With
wouldn't probably be wet plating. When I have the students in, and I had 12 students in my last class, you only have
Mhm.
one person at a time because you don't have 7 or 8 silver baths.
Mhm.
So that's just impractical. So you have one silver bath. So everyone's just you're making one person is making one plate at a time. So
Mhm.
I could teach this class in any environment. I've demonstrated this class from an elementary school all the way up to the colleges here. I've demonstrated it all over out in the field. I've demonstrated in my studio. I've demonstrated outside of my studio. I'll demonstrate this I mean, I'll demonstrate this in a little bathroom. There's no issues. There really isn't.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
don't let that be a concern for you.
okay, wonderful. Yeah, no,
As someone who, I'm not talking here, right? Like I'm daily, day in and day out practicing this. And I do have scientific knowledge. I'm an oncology nurse.
mhm.
Oncology nurses, I handle deadly chemicals all the time.
Yeah, definitely. No, I really appreciate you.
I do too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke, so much. It's a great question. And I haven't got to talk about this before. No one's ever asked me this question, and
Mhm.
Coder is recording this conversation. So I really appreciate you letting me give some of my theory and some of my thoughts on this.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Shane, I want to thank you for your generous time, for all the insight, for all the information. Wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I'll do this for you anytime you want.
Thank you.
Thanks, students, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. Hello, class.